And so here you can see I've got the AutoCAD file linked into Revit the way I showed you. You can set it up before. And so having changed my AutoCAD drawing quite a lot, you can see that my my Revit walls no longer line up with that. And I'm sure, having used Revit quite a bit, most of you, that you won't have too much trouble adjusting it as you need to, but I thought maybe I'd show you some really quick ways you can adjust the Revit things to match AutoCAD. And so just simple tools like Align on the Modify tab. With the Align tool, you can choose, for example, an AutoCAD line and then a Revit edge to line those things up. Where there's a stepped wall like this, you can do things like dragging the wall away. But a good trick there maybe would be to get an extra copy of the wall, which I could do by maybe splitting, using split element to break this wall into two pieces. Problem there is if you go to move this new wall up, it's going to take the other wall with it, no matter what you do. So a simple thing to prevent that is to drag the end of one of those walls away so they're no longer touching, and then it will let you move just this wall without taking the other one with it. And remember, where you have situations like this, where, well, in this case we do have a gap, but you'll have other situations where it's similar but the walls end up touching, you'll still need to have a wall that goes down. And I'll just show you what's happened there quickly. When I'm using the wall tool there, it's on finish face exterior, and that's what I want. Okay, because I want to draw with the outside edge of the, or along the outside edge of the building. And I'm going to draw from this corner, and then I want to come down, and you can see the wall's going the wrong way. So do you remember the way you can flip the wall? Space, yeah, that's, yeah, still. So yeah, so with space you can flip it as you're drawing it, and that's important here because you'll have situations where you need to draw in a certain direction, but you also have a certain location line set which makes it go one way or another. So, well, that's all I'll say about that. But here again, it should tidy the walls up afterwards. And you have then situations like this where you'll have projections where you could try and make a new wall type, also adjust these walls to make them follow that. And there are lots of different options for your wall joins. If you select using the wall join tool, if you select one of those corners, you can change the wall joins, and you definitely could get that projection to work just using the walls that you already have. I'm going to show you a much simpler way. Just again, by drawing a new wall, first I'll just measure this, because you're going to have lots of little projections like this, and that's a 110 projection. So instead of trying to fiddle with these walls and make them follow that, I'll just go and make a new wall type. So I've got here my generic wall type I've been using for everything. I could use the 110 brick wall type that's already there, but I don't want to use the material that that wall has. So I'm going to go to Edit Type and make a new simpler 110 wall, I suppose. So I'll just call it generic still, just to follow that other one. Generic 110 mil wall, I suppose, and then make the width 110. Okay, and then here the location one doesn't really matter because we're working on the inside, but if you can have the interior facing towards the inside of the building, that's better than the other way. So I'm going to leave it on finish face exterior and draw over the edge there with my simple 110 wall. You can see it's left a line between them, but you can then just use the join tool, join geometry on the Modify tab, to join those things together. So joining both of those exterior walls that touch this new wall, that'll clean it up, and that's good enough. And that wall will be useful in situations like this where you do just have a single 110 wall like I've got there. So that's just again with the wall tool going to be drawn over, and the location line there really isn't important because it's an interior wall, so both sides are interior. Just Revit needs to have one of them set as exterior. I just want to get it drawn as quickly as you can and try and keep it fairly simple, because remember, for this project you don't need to do any exterior views. So even though you're going to be using those exterior photos with the brickwork showing to help you work everything out, you don't need to draw in all of that brickwork, which should again make it much simpler for you. You don't need to go as far as even showing the render or the plaster on the interior face of the wall as a separate element in the wall. So we're just going to keep the walls fairly simple, and so that means again looking at them in the type properties that it will probably just have a single component. The only issue there is if you have certain graphics that you want in your plan, and then you want to have a particular colour or material showing that isn't affected by your plan display, then it can help you actually to add in just a thin layer of render for that interior material. But again, try and keep it as simple as you can, because it is going to be a fairly large project and it's just easier to manage if you can keep things as simple as possible. So again, I'll just quickly join a couple more walls, but I don't want to go too far with that, because the other thing I want to talk about is the levels. So maybe just to remind you a couple of those quick things using the wall tool, go back to the 300mm wall that I'm using for most of this, and using pick lines where possible. It's going to make it easier to, or make it a quick thing to get those walls in. You can see that where I've gone over those walls, I can't see the plan drawing anymore. So one little thing I just wanted to show you is in these views, well, you probably know that you can set wireframe as the graphics option to see through some things, and when we do a floor that'll definitely help, but having set it to wireframe, the walls still aren't see-through. So another option you can try there is one that you're hopefully getting used to using a lot in Revit, is the option for the detail level, which is next to your graphics options. So all those graphics options there, wireframe, hidden line and so on, and then next to those you have coarse, medium and fine. The reason that we can see this grey hatch is because it's set as a coarse fill. If I go to fine, it'll turn that off, and now I can see through the walls. So I can tell there these walls are too thick, but I do have a 250mm wall, I hope. Oh, no I don't, sorry. So I'll make one. So again, just following that generic wall type, I'll make a new 250mm wall.
Why is it 250 and not 240?
Well, it's 230 and then there's render both sides. So, yeah, close enough to 250. And because of the way I've made the wall, it's going to take it back the right way. So just think about that when you're making your elements, because I've set the edge out from here with finished face exterior. When I change it to 250, it's going to bring it back the right way. And then I can just continue quickly putting a few more walls in, this time just straight away making them 250. And oh no, I won't use tabs, so again just picking these, shouldn't take too long. Alright, so pretty quick. Once you do the work in AutoCAD, it can seem like a lot of extra work, but it will hopefully save you from fiddling around too much in Revit. So you can see there pretty quickly you can knock up a fairly complex floor plan just following AutoCAD. But then before you go too far, you definitely would want to think about your heights. And that's really the main thing I wanted to show you with this area where the floor level steps down. You'll have to work out what the new floor level is in building C. So I'm sure you'd all remember you've got the staircase there with the ramp next to it. And so it steps down quite a way there. The rest of it's flat. and hopefully you can remember walking along there and where the level changes are. And it's in a facility in these sorts of buildings, they're not going to have sudden changes in level in most of the flooring. So even at the entry here, that should be the same level as the top of the stairs. Coming around here, all of this should be the same floor level. So for example, they're never going to put a threshold from the corridor into a classroom in a building like this. That just wouldn't be acceptable in this kind of building. So it's like a sudden change in level, which you could have in a house easily, and in some other spaces. But in this sort of building, it's much simpler. So you can rely on that consistency for a lot of the floor levels. And coming around here again, you can be sure that that's all at the same height. But then coming down here, you will have a change in level. And so to work those out, you'll need to go and have a look at the photos. And you can see from the steps here that the floor level at the top of those steps, as I was saying, is going to be the floor level for the interior. And so you can follow that brick course around, and then going to your next photo. Sorry, I think it's, well, this one will show it. That one's zoomed out a bit though, so I want to get one that's zoomed in a bit more. Do you have it there? It's just, there are lots of them. They're all in a random order, so just go back. So there's another one from this side that's closer. I don't want to spend too long going through them all. So anyhow, it's in there definitely. So once you look from this side, then you can follow it around to where the windows are and work out the window sill height from the floor level, just by counting bricks. So that's one of the first things you'll need to establish. And then once you have the window sill height, you can then work out the window head height, and then the floor level for the next story, and then again the window sill for that story and head, and then you'll eventually get the ceiling level for the second story. And if you haven't done those things before, trust me, when you go to work in any design firm, that's what they ask the junior people to do, is go and work those things out from scratch. And it's a really good thing to try. I actually enjoy doing those things.
So how do you figure out the floor height?
So starting with those steps. So right, so that's your floor level, and then you can follow that course around. And here we are. These are the photos I wanted. And so there we are. So that course there, you can follow it around once you get a photo from the other side, which here we are. And then from there, so you know that's roughly the course of the floor height. And then counting bricks, you can work out the sill height of that window, and then just keep going up from there. So looking at the levels now that we'll need in this project, we don't need to know those exact heights, because with Revit you don't, you can always adjust those things afterwards. So I'm going to go to one of my views, one of my elevation views, and as always, once you start drawing in your walls, you can adjust the level size so that they're bigger than your building. Using the grips at the end, just stretch those out. In the east elevation, I'm not going to see very much, but in the north elevation, because I've drawn most of the building width there, again I can just stretch those levels out so they're bigger than the building and much easier to work with then. If you leave them sitting over the building, it's creating work for yourself. So we've got ground floor there as the lowest level at the moment, and so that will probably end up being the ground floor for the building that's lower, which is going to be building C. So we'll call that ground floor building C. And what do you say here when it asks you to rename corresponding views? Yes, always. Yeah, I don't even know why they give you that question or that option. It should always be yes. And then on the architecture tab you can click level to make a new level, and so this will be for the higher building, which is in this case building B. And yes, and I don't even know what the difference in the height would be, but off the top of my head I'd say it's about 1200, so that's what we've got, and that's fine for now. And then even just here counting bricks, you can get a pretty good idea of the height to the next story. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 18, 20, 2, 3, 4. So 40 to there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So about 50 courses. We'll definitely need to adjust that afterwards, but for now I can just assume about 50 courses, so 50 times 86, 4,300. Okay, so that's the height from the ground floor of building B to level 1. So if I select level 1, and then looking at the dimensions, you can change that measurement so you don't have to, oops, not 430, 4,300. So you don't have to add up the height from the lower level. So that takes us to 5,500. And then drawing in another level, this will be for the ceiling of level 1. So I'll just call it that, level 1 CL. And again, just trying to get a rough idea of that height from these photos. So it was about here, so I'm not even going to count that. I know there's a... yes. No, well, it was Xavier was taking these, so he obviously had a buddy, and yeah, it was Farley, yeah. Oops. So, oh look, I'm not going to bore you and make you watch me count these, but at a guess, I'm going to say it's about 4 metres to this next ceiling level from level 1. Probably a bit less than that, but let's say about 4 metres, so that'll give us 9,500. Oh, that's from the lower level here. Yeah. So yeah, but from the ground floor of building B, it's yeah. And so then a quick way of taking all of these walls up to the upper level is just by making a window over everything, changing in properties to just show walls, and then I can set the top constraint to level 1 CL. Then in my 3D view, we'll need to maybe have some of these walls finish at the lower level, but I'd say most of these walls would continue through, and you could just reuse the same walls. So if you realise that the layout for those, especially those main walls, is the same on the next level, just keep those walls continuing through. And so now if I go to level 1, I could draw in a floor there, just very roughly, to get an idea how this is working in 3D. So with a floor, I'm not going to use a structural floor, just architectural. I'll leave extend into wall turned on, and then pick walls, and we can simply pick the inside face of some of these walls. Remember, the floor is going to extend beyond this eventually, so again, we don't want to get too fussy here, and just keep it fairly simple, following the walls where I can. And I don't have building C yet, so I'll just finish my floor there and then trim to join these things together. So to finish, and when you ask this question, I'd always say yes. If he asks you about attaching walls, that's a different story. And here you would not want to attach the walls to your floors, because those interior walls that you do want extending through the floor would stop at the floor. So I'd say no to attaching for everything in this project, where it tries to automatically attach things to your floors anyway. Roofs are a different story. But when it asks you, like it did then, about joining, always say yes, and that cleans up the geometry for you. So in the 3D view now, you'll see that these walls, well, it's supposed to clean it up for you, but it doesn't always do the job. So here it's actually done it, okay, but there it hasn't. So I just wanted to show you, if you need to join them manually, you've got the join option, and if you, well sorry, it's not on the menu anymore, just if you click join, you can try using multiple join in situations like this, which might save you a bit of time. So if you've never had a go at that, the trick there is to tick multiple join. And with multiple join, it's not a multiple join everything to everything. You still need to choose a single object that everything else is going to join to. So my single object is the floor that I want the walls to join to. Choose that first. And then to select multiple, you need to use a multiple selection option, like a crossing window. So a window going right to left over those walls there that I want joined. And you can see it's only highlighting the ones that do intersect with the floor, which is a nice thing. And there we go, so they're all joined now, and you can see it's tidied up that geometry, essentially cutting out the part where the floor and the wall intersect. And so I could do the same thing on the lower level, so building B, and so this time, notice I've opened up the view for that floor plan. When you draw the walls, not that it's critical, so it will be for some actually, yeah. So when you're drawing the walls for building B, you'd still probably want to draw them in the floor plan for building C, because the walls would extend down, particularly the exterior walls. So looking at the levels here, if I look at the outside, again just to show you the levels. Okay, so building C is the lower building, or has the lower floor level, and the walls will probably extend a little bit below this. But we're not doing exterior views, so it's not essential that you show the wall extending down below the floor. But it'll just make it easier to manage if you have all of the walls on that level starting from building C, floor level. Yeah, it is a raised floor, yeah. And so, so again, even though I'm drawing building B, I'm going to draw it in the building C floor plan, and my ground floor that has the drawing is, if you look in properties, is attached to that level. So this is something you really have to think about when you're doing management in Revit. When you have multiple views and multiple levels, which level your view is associated with, because you'll often have several floor plans that are taken from a single level, and the name won't tell you because they have to have different names. They can't all have the same name as the level because they're all different views. But if you look at your view properties, scroll down to the bottom, and then you can see grayed out because you can't change it. You'll see then the level that it's associated with. So here I can see ground floor with DWG. There is still associated with building C, ground floor building C, and that's what I want. So then I can just draw in a floor with those walls, but again, if I want the floor to be at the level for building B, so, well, firstly I should have said walls for this building B would still be, as I was saying, on this floor plan. And so again, I'll just, to make that clear, put in a few walls, maybe showing you a couple of little things that'll make your life easier. And so there, the opening is going between those, is going through that wall, but you need to remember, even when you've drawn it like that in AutoCAD, to take the wall across the opening. But hopefully you're getting pretty comfortable with those things. Again, now I can just use pick lines to get these others. And in situations like this, where you've got, well, this is a bit of an unusual one. The wall there is probably like this. It's probably 250 or solid brickwork, even though strictly speaking that part of it is exterior, because this is undercover. There's a roof over this with a big eave that is enclosing all of that area, and it's just a storeroom. So you could probably assume that it's 250, even though it might not be. It's just a storeroom, so you could show it that way regardless, and that makes it much simpler, because then you don't have to have a different wall thickness for the inside part. So just rationalising the drawings and doing things like that can save you a bit of time. But here, where I've got the wall, that definitely there would have to be cavity brickwork, because you wouldn't want it leaking through to the classroom there. But the inside wall would be 250. So there you'd have to split it and make it into those two thicknesses. So here, splitting, just be careful that you get the right one. And now with the upper part there, I can change that to 250. And so, yeah, I'll just put a couple more walls in so I can get the floor. So here again, I think I've done that 300. But I'm not sure. Oops, wrong way. And yeah, so, but again, I wouldn't be too fussy about things like that. Storerooms are very rarely important. And it doesn't want to go the right way anyway. It's just not wanting to go inside for me, so I'll flip it afterwards, that's okay. And that will do it. So, okay, so again, now I want to make a floor for this level, so I've got to remember to go to the building B floor plan. You can change the floor to a different level after you've made it, but it's easier to go to the floor plan associated with that level. And so if I make a floor now, using pick walls, I can just pick these main floor edges. And notice I'm just doing the floor on the inside edge of these walls. Do you know how it would be in reality with a brick building? How do they? Yeah, how do they normally support the floor? So in a brick building, they typically have the floor support. Yeah, well, it's on the brickwork. So you have two skins of brickwork, and the inside skin is supporting the floor. So the floor is basically sitting right on top of that brickwork of the inside skin, and then they build new bricks on top of the floor again for where it continues above that floor.
So that means that you can't really count from the inside, like the number of bricks going up, because we'll get a little bit off because there's floors there.
Yeah, probably, yeah, exactly. But yeah, we can't see the bricks here, but yeah, that's right. If you can see them, that's true. So that's the way it is in reality. But again, you don't need to show all of that construction detail. So to keep it simpler when you're modelling it, just put the floor on the inside edge of your walls. Much simpler. And so that's all I'm going to do here. And yeah, basically, yeah. And so again here, we sit in situations where I've got that extra bit of floor. I suppose I could continue around that, wouldn't hurt. But if you do, you're going to have to do an extra edge here which doesn't really follow the wall. So I think it's easier just to leave that out and just take the floor through that pier. So again, now just draw some lines to cap this floor off. Remember, it's going to be extended later probably, so I'm not going to be too fussy about this. I can even just draw it at the angle that I've got there. So as long as it's a closed shape. And then back to pick walls. And you know why I'm using pick walls instead of just drawing the lines that I want for the floor? Exactly. Yeah, that's right. So if you move the walls later, there's a good chance they might move. The floor goes with it. You don't have to go back and adjust your floor. So if you can use pick walls, it's a really good option. But again, watch out if you have walls that are too complicated. So if you're tempted to use the cavity brick wall, you've got a double brick wall type, it might seem more accurate because these are double brick walls, but you're often going to create work for yourselves because those walls have extra layers. They've got a layer of brickwork, then a cavity, and then another layer of brickwork, and one of those is set to be the structure, and the floor can detect that. That's what this option here will do. And so if you use those more complicated walls, then you've got to think about what's happening with the floor, the way it connects to those inner layers, and you're just creating work for yourself, really. Whereas for an interior project, you just need it to look right from the inside. So again, just follow the inside edge of your wall, and with a generic wall, that's a really simple thing. Once you start using all those components, it's great when you need to show construction details, but not, again, if you're just doing it for a rendered perspective. Sorry? Oh, yes. Okay, so that's plenty for now. I'll just finish that that floor, and it's going to again ask me, do I want to join geometry? But notice it didn't highlight those interior walls, which are the ones I want to join. So again, I'll just use join here and show you how to do it in a plan view. Okay, so with multiple join, just need to find the edge of the floor somewhere, and now again using a crossing window, go over all of the walls, and I'm just going to try and choose every wall I can see there with a crossing window. And notice it only is going to highlight the ones that aren't joined, that are capable of being joined. And so that's just those interior walls there. And that'll fix up especially things like this column. So in the 3D view, looking at it now, you can see it's all fairly well connected. And then, if I maybe just do a quick perspective down that corridor, right, then you can really start to get an idea how it's going to look in 3D. And you want to keep coming back to these perspectives because, again, the reason you're making this model is mainly to get the rendered perspectives. So don't go putting detail in that's not necessary, that won't be seen, particularly things on the outside. And and so then the final thing I was just going to say is to start thinking about the openings. At this stage, you definitely want to be focusing mainly on the walls and the floors, and then the ceiling probably as well, which I'll do cover the ceilings with you later. But that's one of the next things you'd want to model after those two main things, your floor and your walls. But then the openings as well, you could start establishing those. And so in my AutoCAD drawing, you can see that I have started to work out the sizes. But in Revit, you don't want to draw in all of those lines to establish your openings. Just do some reference planes. And then you might see how they relate going through the building. So just with a reference plane, I'll snap here to, say, this corner. Just take it down and then stretch it so that it goes up the other way. And a good trick there, rather than drawing a lot more reference planes, is just to select that one, copy, make sure multiples turned on, and then I can pick it up and snap it to these corners. So I'll just do a few of them. There we go. And so then what you'll find is that these should largely line up with something on the other side. So here you can see it's just a single window on the other side, but at least one side of it does line up with this one. The same here. So when you go to put your windows in, you've got a reference that you can snap to, and they'll come up in the other views as well. So that's basically the approach I think would work well. With a building like this, it's fairly regular, so you'll have a lot of set outs like that should be pretty consistent. And so maybe just one little extra thing where you have the things like the mantelpiece. I don't know why that's showing up that way. So some of my lines are missing there. So that's the order of the display, and so where you can't see some of the lines that come through from AutoCAD, just try turning off the image. So if you've forgotten that, it's in your view properties, and there it's in your visibility graphics overrides. You can click edit, or the shortcut VV is a really useful one, and then so VV or VP does the same thing. Under imported categories, you'll find in the drawing name the layers that have come in for that drawing file. And so here we are, there's the layer that has the image on it, and once that's turned off, now I can see those other lines. Okay, and so that can be a bit difficult to manage. You can set up the draw order in AutoCAD to prevent that from happening, but it's probably easier just to use layers to manage it. So then the final thing I was going to say is to model, I think, something like the mantelpiece. Would you know how to do that? This mantelpiece, which is that triangular shape, a simple way, so you could model it with walls, and I'll just show you. If I draw a wall for the left-hand side, well, I've got some extra layers coming in there that actually shouldn't even be there. So I'll just draw this in pretty roughly for now. So I've drawn my 300 wall, which it is at the back. But then this triangular part, you could use, again, just the wall tool to make that. But if you want to have a solid triangular section of wall like this, sometimes it's easier just to go to model in place and make an extrusion. Set it to the walls category. Right, so this is hopefully good practice with those basic modelling things that you should all be okay with, because that's something you do in the earlier subjects. If you're not, spend time with it. Yes? Yep. Okay, so walls, this is actually a really good trick. People forget this. When you go to make a family, if you're used to making families the other way, making a separate family in its own file, you might have struggled to find how to make a wall family because there's no wall option here. But remember, when you're making walls in a project using model in place, you do have the option to set them to walls, which is one of those not so obvious things in Revit. And that's how you make a wall using an extrusion, just by doing model in place, setting the walls category, and then the name, I'll call it mantelpiece, or mantle should do, mantle 1. Okay, and then you've got the extrusion tool. And so you can set that to any shape you like. So this might do, just to keep it very simple. So the height there, we'll need to tie to the level later, and you can do that, but for now I'll just make it, say, it's about 9 metres. Tick to finish. I'll show you later how you can make the graphics identical to the other walls, but for now, if I go to this other view, you can see there it shows up in a similar way to the walls, so I'll finish that for now, and then later on, if you're wondering how to get that shaded display to be the same as your walls, you can do that, and you can, you need to use the course display to do it if you're using your course plan display, but then otherwise, yeah, you can use the materials to do it for the other displays. So, but joining it definitely is a good option, and so that's going to give you the course material straight away, which is really handy. Oops, so I'm just going to get those 2 walls. There we go. And so that's a quick, easy way of getting that sort of blocky graphics without playing around with walls to try and make them do that. Because you can make walls do this, but it's a lot of work, when sometimes it's easier just to model the shape you want with a simple extrusion. as long as you know how to get into that. And well, in the course display, yeah, but the materials are still different, so you need to go and set that up as well. But you can do all of that. But you know, to begin with, that'll give you plenty to do. Just establishing your main constraints and sizes, and you'll be able to fine tune things like that as you go. But again, try and think about those things that carry all the way through your project. So those openings obviously are an important one. They should project through the building. And then these mantelpieces, you've got those at least 4 times in that group of spaces, because you've got them on the, they're for 8 times. If there are, I just can't remember if you've got them in building B, but I think you do. I know you definitely have them in the 2 rooms here, so there's one there, so you can just copy it across to the next room, and on the upper level it would be repeated as well. And then we'll just have to check, I think it's in building C as well. Yeah, just in place, yeah, extrusion, yeah, that's it.
But do we really see
No,
this in the building there?
Oh yeah, you do, yeah. Yeah, it is, yeah.
But trust there, right?
Yeah, it's, so, if you're not sure what it looks like...
Wall and then put it there.
Exactly, yeah. So, where is it? So it's just behind that wall there. You can just see the shelf coming out, I think. Yeah, definitely there. Oh, there it is. Yep. Okay, so that's what it looks like. So that'd be something you'd have to retain, and it's not a bad little feature. You might be able to make something good out of it. So, and again, that's in all of the rooms. So extra things like that, just think about how you can model them simply, just to get the main form. Don't put in detail that you're not going to retain. So this shelf, if you're not going to retain all of that, don't model it all. And the alcove, so you could probably get away with taking that out if you wanted to, but you might want to retain it, up to you. So then again, just to remind you one last time, you don't need to do exterior views for this project, so the roof is not a priority. You'll need to do elevations and sections, so you will need to put some sort of roof in at some point, but it can be a very simplified roof, and again, it's not a priority, so focus on the things that relate to the interior more, which are going to be your walls, floors, and what's the other main thing? Walls, floors, and ceilings, exactly, yep.
That's what you've forgotten was right
Yeah. So hopefully you'll have some idea about the ceiling tool, but maybe I'll go through that separately next week. Okay? After the holidays.